Patriots, strap in, because what you're about to hear will ignite your faith in real American leadership again. This isn't just politics as usual. No, sir, what we just heard on the Senate floor is a reminder that when conservatives stand tall, America rises with them. For too long, we've been told that our values are outdated, that wanting secure borders, lower taxes, and strong families is somehow extreme. But guess what? The senator from the great state of Texas just laid out a plan that proves we're not just right. We're the only ones fighting for the hardworking American people. And folks, this bill? It's being called the Big Beautiful Bill, and trust me, it lives up to the name. Let's break it down.
Senator from the great state of Texas.
Mr. President, I was here in 2017 when we passed the original Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and what ensued was perhaps the greatest amount of economic growth, the greatest reduction of unemployment among all sorts of folks who historically have suffered high unemployment rates. And in short, our economy was booming. Originally, we had some debates about whether or not this would have a static effect. In other words, when you start adding the numbers up, do you account for economic growth and the stimulative effect of the bill? As it turns out, the $1.5 trillion deficit in the original bill was met by economic growth because we brought back money that had been invested abroad because of high tax rates here, and a variety of other measures which made our economy boom again. So the one point that I want to make sure and make is this is more than just about the numbers on a page. This is the cumulative effect of not only lowering taxes, but downsizing regulation, encouraging domestic energy production, and doing all of those things which will cause our economy to grow again. And if we can get our economy growing at a better rate, let's say 3% of our GDP, that will add trillions of dollars to the federal treasury and more than make up in any money that we end up providing in terms of tax relief. So I'm very excited about this particular legislation, what's now come to be known as the Big Beautiful Bill. But I've listened as our Democratic colleagues have criticized this bill, actually, which hasn't actually finally been written yet. It's getting close, and I hope we can start voting on the bill as early as later on today. But what strikes me as bizarre is our Democratic colleagues have offered zero alternative. Do they want a multi-trillion-dollar tax increase on the American people? That on top of 40-year high inflation, thanks to Bidenomics, everything costs roughly on average 20% more than it did before the radical spending spree of the last administration, which threw gasoline on the fire of inflation and ate up the standard of living of most Americans and made their dollar worth about 20% less than it was beforehand. I think we have a better idea, and that is, no, we don't think you should increase taxes by trillions of dollars on top of 40-year high inflation, thanks to the Biden-Harris administration and their radical spending spree. I think most Americans would agree with us. So they have no alternative other than to raise taxes on hardworking American families. The other thing that this bill does is it increases the standard deduction. Most families don't necessarily even itemize their tax deductions, so the standard deduction is important. The child tax credit, we know that it's expensive to raise children, and so having an enhanced child tax credit is really important, and that is what this legislation will do. But the other thing that this bill does, as long as I've been in the Senate, we have never tried to undertake spending cuts necessary to deal with a $37 trillion in debt. We're now paying more interest on the national debt than we are on defense, which is unsustainable. We don't have to be reminded of recent events in Iran, for example, with Iran fast tracking toward a nuclear weapon. And thank goodness to the decisiveness and courage of our United States military and our commander-in-chief, President Trump. Iran is no longer on that fast track to build a nuclear weapon. But this is a very fragile, dangerous world we live in. The most dangerous since World War II. And none of us want to go down that path again. So the way we address that is to reestablish deterrence, American peace through strength. That's how we keep the peace, is through strength. And we can't do it if we don't have the money to spend on our defense, either on our personnel or on our weapons systems and the like. So our Democratic friends have no answer to any of this. Their answer, I guess, is to do nothing. There was a former Speaker of the House, Sam Rayburn, years ago, a Texan, who said, any jackass can kick down a barn, but it takes a skilled carpenter to build one. And we're doing our very best to try to build that barn. Is it perfect? No. But we are trying, and we believe that we're making tremendous progress on a number of fronts. And one area that's particularly important to me and my constituents in Texas, all 31 million of them, is finally to bring some security to our border. We were told during the Biden-Kamala Harris administration that we needed to pass some new laws back when the policies of the administration were open borders, and we're still paying the price, and we probably will pay the price for years to come. Criminals coming across the border, some of the dangerous gang members, illegal drugs, human trafficking of innocent children and women. But when we elected President Trump on November the 5th, it didn't take him very long to bring those numbers, those tens of thousands of people streaming across the border on a monthly basis, to bring that to near zero. And it didn't take any new laws. It just took a president willing to enforce the law. But it cost money to provide for the detention facilities and the personnel necessary to secure the border and to safeguard our country. And that's one of the other things that's in this bill that's so important. Money to build more infrastructure or the wall. More money to hire Border Patrol and Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents. And more money for detention facilities so that there are real consequences associated with coming into our country illegally.
1. America First tax reform. Back in 2017, Trump gave us the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and BOOM. The economy took off like a rocket. Now, the big beautiful bill builds on that with more tax relief. For working Americans, we're not just talking about the rich, we're talking about you, the everyday hero keeping this country alive. 2. Middle-class relief, real money in your pocket, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. That's the kind of respect our working class deserves. This bill keeps more of your paycheck where it belongs, in your hands. 3. Child tax credit boost. Raising a family isn't easy these days, especially with Bidenflation eating away at every dollar. This bill increases the child tax credit, benefiting 46 million families. Tell me that's a handout to billionaires. I dare you. 4. Border security, like we had under Trump. Remember when Trump secured the border without passing a single new law? That's leadership. This bill funds the wall, detention centers, and more border agents, because a country without borders is no country at all. 5. Medicaid and SNAP reform. Work for benefits, no more freeloading. If you're able-bodied and just sitting around on your Xbox all day, guess what? Taxpayers shouldn't be funding that lifestyle. This bill restores dignity through work, just like we had under the 1996 Welfare Reform Act. 6. Democrats? Nothing but crickets, let me ask y'all. Where's the left's plan? Where's their proposal? Oh wait, they don't have one. All they've got are cheap sound bites and fear-mongering. Meanwhile, this bill is actually doing something. 7. Ending the lies, this ain't no tax game. Left says this is for the ultra-wealthy. You know who believes that? People who've never read the bill. It helps the middle class, period. The lies have got to stop, and thank God we've got voices in the Senate calling them out. 8. Reimbursing Texas for defending America while the federal government slept. Texas took action. Now this bill gives them back what they spent defending our borders, because unlike Biden's crew, we believe in paying back those who stepped up. 9. No benefits for illegal immigrants. Illegal aliens should not get U.S. taxpayer benefits. It's not controversial. It's common sense. This bill tightens up eligibility checks to stop that madness. Enough is enough. 10. Time for unity and action. This bill is Trump's vision in action: law, order, prosperity. The senator made it clear. Now is the time to unite behind it. The left wants to tear down the barn. We're here to build it stronger than ever before.
And then, as I mentioned a moment ago, the money that's necessary to reestablish deterrence, to help our military. That is in this bill as well. And the answer of our Democratic colleagues is no, we don't think we should do anything to secure the border, to defend the nation, or to prevent a multi-trillion-dollar tax increase, along with the devastating economic consequences of hardworking Texas and American families. The only thing our colleagues on the other side have to say is this is going to help rich people at the expense of regular folks. One of our colleagues described the bill as handouts for billionaires, arguing that our legislation would cause the American people to, quote, suffer so that Jeff Bezos can buy another yacht. So what's her alternative to our legislation? Crickets. Nothing. It's a cheap shot. Looking west to Nevada, one of our colleagues has said this is a, quote, tax scam that hurts the middle class while giving trillions to the ultra-wealthy. Now, I realize these are probably focus group tested phrases that move the dial in the absence of any other information. But the fact of the matter is, this is false. And you know, I guess I'm old-fashioned. I was raised to believe that you should tell the truth and you should not lie. But up here in Washington, D.C., in the Congress, on things like this, lying seems to be the coin of the realm. And unfortunately, it has an impact if people don't know the truth, which is why we have to point out the important aspects of this legislation and what we are trying to do. These statements by our Democratic colleagues cannot be further from the truth. And here's the worst part. They know it. They know it, but they persist. This bill is anything but a reverse Robin Hood scheme. But I'm not surprised, I guess, that they are misrepresenting this bill in an attempt to scare the American people and maybe try to energize their political base. I think Democrats are a little desperate these days, seeing what happened in the New York mayoral election with an anti-Semitic socialist winning that nomination in New York. This is what the modern Democratic Party has become, the party of AOC and the radicals. And they wonder why they lost the last election in November. Well, those sort of politics and policies were rejected by the American people. in favor of a president who will enforce the law and who will keep America safe. According to the Wall Street Journal, 62% of Americans will see a tax increase if we don't pass this extension. 62%. Well, that is obviously more than just people who are the well-to-do. Those are middle-class taxpayers. And, of course, President Trump has said he wants to further extend tax relief to the middle class, people who work in service industries, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. Those are genuinely middle-class tax cuts. And I guess our Democratic colleagues are opposed to those too. They think, I presume, that they ought to pay in the service industries, the middle class, hardworking middle class in our country ought to pay more, not less. If we let the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act provisions expire, households earning less than $400,000 a year will face a $2.6 trillion tax hike, with the average family of four earning $80,000 paying $1,700 more in taxes alone every year. In Texas, families will be saddled with $3,000 in additional taxes if we fail to extend these expiring provisions. And as I mentioned a moment ago, working families will see the child tax credit cut in half. Our Democratic colleagues won't tell you this, but the big, beautiful bill, as it's called, will prevent all of this and more. It increases the child tax credit, which is estimated to benefit 46 million American families. Are all of those the super rich? Well, I think not. These are average, hardworking, middle-class families who will benefit from the enhanced child tax credit. Our bill will help working Americans with provisions, as I said, like the no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. I would actually like to see some of our Democratic colleagues go out to their favorite restaurant and explain to their server that they support the U.S. government continuing to take a larger and larger cut of their earnings, their tips earnings. I doubt they would acknowledge that. I don't think that kind of suggestion would go over too well, but that's what they're doing by opposing this bill. And again, if they've got a better idea, let's hear it. Again, all we hear is crickets, silence, when they're not misrepresenting what the bill actually does. Another provision that is important, and this used to be bipartisan, back when Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton, President Bill Clinton, a Republican speaker, a Democrat president of the United States, passed the Welfare Reform Act. Congress implemented reasonable working requirements for able-bodied adults. It's not good for people to sit on the couch and play video games all day when they are able-bodied. Work brings not only the ability to provide for yourself and your family a certain amount of dignity and self-respect, but it helps your community. It makes you a more productive, a happier person. And certainly it's not fair to the taxpayer to have them subsidize people sitting on the couch playing video games all day when they can contribute to their community and their family. One of our colleagues from Illinois said, Republicans are working to cut food and health care programs like SNAP and Medicaid. The so-called big, beautiful bill will hurt hardworking Americans to pay for tax cuts and billionaires, plain and simple. More propaganda, more disinformation, more untruths. The reforms to Medicaid, which is an important safety net, healthcare safety net, and SNAP, previously known as food stamps, included in the big, beautiful bill, will strengthen and safeguard our safety net for those who actually need it. In Medicaid, That money should not go to able-bodied adults. It should go to children, disabled, and pregnant women. That's the original target of Medicaid. That's where the safety net is important. But if you're giving that money and spending money on able-bodied adults, obviously that's going to detract from the money where the money should go to help those truly in need. And the same thing with food stamps or the SNAP program. Why in the world should taxpayers subsidize somebody who's capable of working and contributing to themselves and their family and their community by subsidizing them through food stamps? So a work requirement for able-bodied adults just makes sense. But I've been here in Washington, D.C. long enough to know that common sense isn't all that common up here. As I mentioned, the Welfare Reform Act of 1996, in a bipartisan fashion, implemented work requirements to temporary assistance to needy families, which was a welfare program, and it was remarkably successful in bringing those living in poverty into the labor force so they can earn a living, so they don't need to depend on Medicaid because maybe they have private health insurance through their employer. And it just makes sense on all of these means-tested programs, and by that it just means that have certain income requirements. If you fall below, you qualify. If you're above that earnings level, you don't qualify anymore. But why shouldn't we have those work requirements for all means-tested programs? Well, we should, and we will. Recent research from the Foundation for Government Accountability found that more than 62% of able-bodied adults who receive Medicaid don't work at all. 62% able-bodied adults sitting on a couch, playing video games, I guess. I don't know what you do all day. Watch TV. If you're able-bodied and you're capable of working, but you're not working. With the national debt exceeding $36 trillion a year and more than half of Medicaid beneficiaries who are able to work but sitting home idle, requiring these folks to at least start looking for a job is a common sense step in the right direction. We need to make sure that our safety nets are there for people who need them, not for people who don't need them. We need them to be secure for the seniors who've fallen on hard times and those who've fallen on hard times, and we have to make sure others are not abusing the system while bankrupting the country. Another way the big, beautiful bill safeguards our safety net is by strengthening eligibility checks. It's well known that people who in certain income levels tend to fall in and out of eligibility for some of these means-tested programs. Let's say they're working, but then they've lost a job, and until they can find another one, they need access to them. But once they get a job, then they no longer should qualify. So strengthening eligibility checks is an important reform. And not providing these benefits to illegal aliens. You know, the Border Patrol tells me in my many visits down there, and I've hosted many of my colleagues down at the border, they said there's push factors and there's pull factors to illegal immigration. The push factors are the normal ones you would expect: poverty, violence in your home country. But the pull factors are the incentives that are provided to people to come to our country illegally. And when we provide taxpayer benefits to people from other countries, it is a pull factor. It is an encouragement, an incentive, and particularly when there are no consequences to violating the law, as was the case during the 4 years of the last administration. Our colleagues across the aisle apparently think it's okay to take money out of your pocket and to give it to illegal aliens for benefits. And they see no problem with incentivizing more and more people to come across the border illegally. Well, this brings me to another important provision, which is important particularly to my state, the state of Texas. Thanks to the efforts of the Texas delegation in the House, this bill includes money to reimburse the state of Texas for border security measures that were undertaken in the absence of the federal government doing its job during the Biden administration. Our international border is a federal responsibility, but in the absence of the Biden administration enforcing the law, the state of Texas had no alternative but to implement Operation Lone Star, to provide the Department of Public Safety and the National Guard to help secure the border, to help stem the flow of drugs, to help slow down the human trafficking, and to slow down and stop as much of the illegal immigration as they could. And that came at significant expense to state taxpayers. This is not the state's responsibility, but the state had to bear the burden, and this bill reimburses Texas taxpayers for that unfair burden that was left as a result of the abdication of responsibility by the previous administration. Mr. President, these are just a few of the many important wins for the American people that are included in this big, beautiful bill. I wish we were in a different place where our Democratic colleagues would actually work with us and try to prevent a multi-trillion-dollar tax increase on 62% of American working families. But in the absence of their willingness to work with us, we have no choice but to get this done with just Republican votes. I encourage my fellow Republicans not to let the naysayers convince the American people that this is somehow bad for them, when the opposite is actually true. This is also, finally, an important part of President Trump delivering on the promises he made when he won a historic election last November the 5th. And it's our job to deliver on that electoral mandate by passing this agenda. This bill will do wonderful things for the 31 million people in my state and the 250 million people who call America home. And I look forward to supporting it when it comes to a floor in the coming hours and days. I yield the floor.
Patriots. The big beautiful bill isn't just another piece of legislation, it's a line in the sand. Are we going to let the radical left keep taxing us into poverty while
Senator
our borders
from the great
burn?
state of Texas.
Or are we going to stand up, fight back, and say ENOUGH? This bill brings the fight back to we the people.
President, I was here in
It protects our families, our
2017 when we
paychecks, our
passed the
borders, and
original
our
Tax
future.
Cuts
I
and
stand
Jobs
with
Act.
Texas. I stand
And
with Trump.
what
And I stand with
ensued
every
was
single American
perhaps
who
the
believes
greatest
this nation
amount
is
of
worth
economic
defending.
growth,
If you're
the
fired
greatest
up like I
reduction
am, hit that
of
LIKE
unemployment
button,
among
share this with
all
every
sorts of
patriot,
folks
you know,
who
and don't
historically have
forget to
suffered
subscribe
high unemployment
for more
rates.
bold, uncensored
And
truth. Turn that
in short,
notification
our
bell
economy was
on
booming.
because the fight for America is just getting
Originally,
started.
we had some
God
debates
bless
about
Texas.
whether or
God
not
bless President
this would
Trump.
have a
And God
static
bless
effect.
the United
In
States
other
of
words,
America.
when you